Chapter 3. What about friends? Monday the 30th of March 2020. Sometimes I think imaginary friends are better than real friends. They never argue about what games to play, and they always know exactly how you're feeling. And they don't have any bad habits like farting, except for Fartbot, the imaginary farting robot, or picking their noses, apart from Norbert Noseful. He's another one of my imaginary friends, and he keeps all his things in his nose. In his left nostril, he keeps his violin, his paintbrushes, and his pet mouse. In his right nostril, he keeps his golf clubs and his pet elephant. In total, I have 7 imaginary friends. 1. Evil Egbert. He's about the size of an egg, and he sits on my shoulder telling me to do shockingly evil things. Once, he told me to trap my little brother under a laundry basket with 3 heavy dictionaries on top to stop him escaping. Don't worry, I almost never do what Egbert tells me to. 2. Norbert Noseful. Everybody already knows about him. Number 3. Parsley, the imaginary guinea pig. I invented her before I had any real guinea pigs. And then it wouldn't have been fair to get rid of her just because I got real ones. Anyway, the real guinea pigs don't mind that she's imaginary. Also, I named her after myself because I was really young then and I didn't have a very good imagination. 4. Pom Pom, the ninja. He's an imaginary ninja who looks after the imaginary unicorns at the end of the garden. Sometimes the other ninjas make fun of him for liking unicorns so much, but he doesn't mind because unicorns are awesome. They eat fairy dust and poop rainbows. Number 5. Detective Inspector Dracula. A vampire who is also a detective. Quite a lot of the time, it turns out that Detective Dracula was the murderer as well as the detective, which makes everything a little bit awkward. 6. The reading dog. The reading dog is one of those big, shaggy brown dogs who just loves books. He loves nothing better than to snuggle up and read my book over my shoulder. And number 7, Fartbot. A genius scientist created him with cutting-edge fart extinguishing technology. But unfortunately, the scientist got distracted and put the nozzle on backwards. So now Fartbot just farts a lot. Most of the time, this is kind of nasty, but sometimes it's useful to have someone to blame. Today, I was in the garden with Detective Dracula, trying to solve the mystery of the sheep skull on the wall. How did it get there? Who killed the sheep? What happened to the rest of its body? I had 2 suspects. First, my brother Beau. He's always digging around in the dirt, unearthing rotting old things, and he won't let us throw them away because he calls them his treasures. One time, he found a black leathery bird's claw the size of his fist. He carried it around, tied to a piece of string for weeks, until Mum accidentally threw it in the bin. My other suspect is Detective Dracula himself. But I couldn't work out how an imaginary vampire could lift a real sheep's skull. I was so stumped, and so was Detective Dracula. That's the problem with imaginary friends. When you run out of ideas, so do they. So I decided to send for backup. I ran inside and grabbed the enchanted tablet. It looks and works just like a normal tablet, except it uses magic instead of electronics. That's how I talk to my best friend Tui, pronounced Tui. There are lots of brilliant things about Tui, like that she can speak Maori, and she always has the best ideas for games, and her hair is a different colour each week, and she always knows how to solve a mystery. But there's one terrible, horrible, atrocious thing about Tui. She lives in New Zealand. That's on the other side of the world. So I can only talk to her by magic electronic tablets. Tui cracked the case immediately. Detective Dracula must have used his evil powers to possess Bo and make him put the skull on the wall. Then we played some games together, because even though we're best friends, sometimes it's a bit difficult talking through an enchanted portal. I don't know what grown-ups blabber on about for hours and hours. After talking to Tui, I felt happy, but I also felt sad that she lives so far away. When I feel like this, imaginary friends aren't much help because they just feel the same way as me. So I wrote a postcard full of questions for my gran. My gran is tiny. Not like evil Egbert, but she is smaller than me. Sometimes I think she's so small that she's not really a grown-up. She's more of a grown-down. Normal grown-ups are so busy worrying about crystals and getting super glue out of Bo's hair, but my gran always has time to understand. Here are some of the questions that I asked her. Did you ever have any imaginary friends? Who do you miss seeing most at the moment? How should I keep in touch with my friends? What do you think we should do when we meet up in real life again? Chapter 4. How to teach yourself better than a teacher could teach yourself. Tuesday, the 31st of March, 2020. Today, I've been thinking about the number 2. That sounds a bit babyish, doesn't it? Let me put it another way. Today, I've been investigating the properties of the number commonly referred to as 2. It all started when I was feeding my animals. Dogs have 2 eyes and 2 ears. Goats have 2 horns. Even Bo has 2 arms and 2 legs and 2 kind of snotty nostrils. And that got me thinking about all the 2s animals have. Birds have 2 wings and 2 feet. Dolphins have 2 flippers. And crabs have 2 claws. Stichosaurus and stick insects have 2 antennae. But some things don't come in 2s. Dogs have 4 legs. Beetles have 6 legs. Octopuses have 8 tentacles and centipedes have 100 legs. Millipedes have 1,000 legs. Some ladybirds have 6 spots and some have 8 spots. Bo has 10 fingers and 10 toes. Then I started looking at the plants in my garden. The daffodils had 5 petals. One of the daisies I looked at had 35 petals and another one had 42 petals. The dandelions all had different numbers of leaves. I tried counting the branches on the tree, but I got confused about what counts as a branch and what's just part of another branch. At lunch, I counted 13 seeds in my apple, and then I counted the seeds in Bo's apple to make sure. He only had 10 seeds. Have you ever noticed the pattern? Animals have even numbers of body parts, but plants can have odd or even. The only exception is 1. Monkeys only have 1 tail, and you've only got 1 head, I hope. I decided to do some research on the enchanted tablet. It turns out that almost all animals are bilaterally symmetrical. That means that you could cut them in half down the middle and they'd have the same number of legs, fingers, tentacles, snotty nostrils on either side. But plants are mostly radial. They're mostly radially symmetrical, which means you can spin them around and around and they still look pretty much the same. Imagine spinning a daisy flower around and around. So plants could have odd or even numbers of petals, leaves, branches, seeds. I was very pleased with my discovery, so I went to go and tell Bo. But he wasn't very interested in the numbers of parts that animals and plants have. When he grows up, he wants to be a space paleontologist. He plans to go to the moon and dig up dinosaur bones. I've tried explaining that there aren't any dinosaur bones on the moon, but Mum says it's okay because it keeps him busy learning lots of things about dinosaurs and lots of things about space. Yesterday, he told me the biggest plant in our solar system is Jupiter, which I thought was quite mean until I realised what he meant was the biggest planet in our solar system is Jupiter. Today, he was focusing really hard on learning how to spell pterodactyl, which is pretty ambitious because sometimes he struggles to spell bow. Mum says that if you don't go to school, then you need to have a motivation. At school, you have teachers prowling around you, making sure you do your work and hitting you with canes or locking you in the chokey if you don't follow the rules. Do they still do that? I read Matilda and Danny, the Champion of the World, and that thing sort of happened, or that sort of thing happened all the time in their schools. My motivation is curiosity and finding things out. Bo's is dreaming of being a space paleontologist. Mum's motivation is that she loves to master learning how to do things. 1 week last winter, she spent every night practicing juggling with oranges. And now she can juggle any fruit she likes, even pineapples. Another time, she decided she wanted to learn calligraphy, the really fancy curly whirly writing. So she spent ages practicing, and now her writing is so curly that nobody can read it. Mum was more impressed by my discovery than Bo about the symmetry of animals and plants, especially because we'd only learned about different types of symmetry a couple of weeks ago. But then she got out the boom. That stands for the Big Book of Maths. It's absolutely enormous. It's a maths book, and we call it boom because that's the sound it makes when you drop it on the kitchen table. I sort of wish I could just spend all my time investigating things, but it's kind of useful learning stuff from the boom. Like last week, we learned all about the different types of symmetry, and that was helpful in my animal and plant parts discovery today. After maths, I did some writing, this book, and Mum told me to write down some more questions about motivation and learning things at home. So here they are. What's your motivation? Are there any other types of motivation? Should you only have one motivation, or can you have different ones? What else do you need to help you learn at home?